Have you been enjoying our Impact podcasts and our great guests? Then please give us a thumbs up and leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your favorite podcasts. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm so excited to have with us today my friend, Ryan Fogelman. He's a serial entrepreneur, many brands that he started and he runs right now. We're going to be talking about them all. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Ryan.
Hey, John, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and it's great to have you on. Finally, I've been dying to get you on the show and talk about all the cool things you're working on, but we're going to get to that. But before we get to that, Ryan, your journey is really wonderful and fascinating. I think will be really inspirational for a lot of our young listeners out there. Can you share a little bit about the Ryan Fogelman background story and how you even get on this journey of becoming a very successful serial entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a long road. I'm 48 years old now, right? So, I mean, it's been fun, but I mean, I started off and really, I mean, I cut my teeth as a shoe salesman, right? So I worked in Detroit. I'm from Detroit originally. I sold shoes and clothes at a place called Mr. Allen's. So the commercial was always like, we have Adidas, Fila, Nike at $29.98, $24.50. And I worked 100% commission every day, inner city of Detroit, outskirts of Detroit. And, that's really where I kind of, cut my teeth learning how to sell and, to talk to people and, kind of get out of my comfort zone. But yeah, that was fun. I went to Michigan State, got a undergrad in business, and then I went to Case Western and got a law degree in MBA. But really, honestly, what I do and really my passion has always been, really helping the inventors and, the guys who are building these, because I always thought I was going to be an inventor. And it was a tough day when I woke up one morning and I'm like, I'm never coming up with a good idea, right? Like, I mean, it's just not ever happening. But I'm really good at taking other people's ideas and building them into a business. And again, I think that's really what a true entrepreneur does, right? I mean, it's, inventors are different and, I can get into that a little bit, but I mean, there's been some amazing people that I've met and helped really build a lot of these brands. So it's been amazing.
We're going to get into that in a second, but your backstory on how you made from how a kid from Detroit made it over to Columbus, Ohio is a great one as well. Why don't you share that with our listeners as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I lived in Cleveland when I went to Case Western, and I moved, and my wife and I we lived in Atlanta, and her entire family moved from Youngstown to Columbus. So she basically said, if you're going to travel, actually, the truth is, I got offered a job paying like $300,000, like at a really amazing company in another city, and my wife was like, if you're going to travel, I'm not moving. So basically, I was forced into this life of hustling. And, these are the early career things that happen. And you're like, okay, I can't believe I gave up that opportunity. But honestly, I've been so much happier. So, I definitely had a harder road because of it. But at the same time, it's been pretty fulfilling. And again, I can tell you that Columbus, Ohio it's literally beyond my dreams. How just much change. And Columbus, I mean, I think we have like $100 billion in like Intel plants and Google plant and Amazon. I mean, there's so much going on in Columbus, Ohio. It's insane. So yeah, I've been pretty fortunate.
Well, funny, it's really funny, Ryan. I'm a little older than you. I'm 60, and I've been coming to Columbus since I'm 13 or 14 because of my harness racing background. It's the headquarters for the USTA, United States Trotting Association, and it was a little
Yep.
sleepy town back then. But now when I come out there, because I have a whole group of executives that live and work out of Columbus that work for us, and it has become such a wonderful city, and it's just booming. Every time I come, I just see new things and new development, and it's fantastic. Actually, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, literally, all we need is the Cavaliers to become the Columbus Cavaliers, and we'll be in great shape. So I have a call in to Dan Gilbert to see if I can get that done.
I love it. If
Uh,
anyone's going to do it, you're going to do it, Ryan. Hey,
I mean, listen, you know what? It's funny. We have soccer, and we have, but like I don't think I can get the Red Wings here, but I'm definitely going to be pushing for something.
um, you know, the life of a serial entrepreneur is fascinating, and it's almost like boys with girls, and if that's if that's even politically correct anymore to say, but it's like you never forget the first one. I mean, the first one. So when talk about your life as a serial entrepreneur, and what was your first big hit that you realized? Wait a second, I could do this, and I could, wash, rinse, repeat this what I'm doing, and keep and go into different industries and keep winning again and again and again. Explain how you got involved and how you actually see opportunities. How do you see white space and voids in the marketplace, and then want to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in the beginning of my career, I actually did it for everybody else, right? And I think the aha moment is when you think, okay, like I've made enough people money and I've done enough building. I mean, I worked when I came to Columbus. I was actually brought here. I'd worked at Accenture for a couple of years, and I was brought here by an executive who actually left Accenture and came, and it was a company that was manufacturing CDs and DVDs, right? So, like literally the day I started, they went bankrupt. So imagine I'm calling my dad and I'm like, "Hey, Dad, that new job that I told you that I was moving to Columbus for? Well, they just went bankrupt." And
Oh,
he's like, "Well, what's going to happen?" And literally, I got a phone call from the HR rep who basically said, all that stuff that's in storage, please put it in your name because it's in the bankruptcy now. So basically, this was like my entire life. I mean, I was, I just got out of school. I had debt anyways, but long story short, we were in and out of bankruptcy, bought by a private equity group. We built the business to, from 20 to 50 million. Then we bought another company. So like I had built my business unit from 3 million to 27 million over 6 years. And it was, it was amazing to do it. But the reality is that, the from a corporation perspective, I mean, you do it for other people and, there's certain rewards. So, that was really successful, but the company ended up being bankrupt. Like they bankrupted themselves again 6 years later. And, it was something that I believe it was done on purpose. But with that, like I started to realize I'm not the master of my own destiny. So when I left there, I started Conversion Development Group. And that's where, I've done outsourced VP of business development for a long time. And that's where, from my perspective, marketing is truly the only good marketing is marketing that focuses on some sort of a sales conversion, right? I mean, I think we spend so much time in marketing departments going back and forth. And again, there's something to be said for branding, but like in true marketing, it's really all how do you drive eyeballs and how do you turn those eyeballs into some sort of,
right.
revenue producing relationship. So, that so I ended up having about 16 clients. And then again, I realized that now when you have an agency, you're literally constantly trying to fill the void, right? Constantly trying to fill the pipeline. So in 2015, couple things happened. One, I was working with these inventors who own the patent for regrip. And so I got I got that product basically sold to one of my best friends who runs a company called Nakoma. And so, that happened basically in 15. So we were starting that business unit from scratch. And then Brad Gladstone, who started Fire Rover, called me up and he was like, I mean, I went to high school with him and, I was a fraternity brother with him and he calls me, he's like, Fogelman, get up here. I hear you like cool stuff. And I go, okay. And so I drove to Detroit and I drive to the back of the scrap metal yard and there's a big red box and literally it's like a huge squirt gun. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, I was amazed at the technology, and honestly, in the beginning, like I hate to say this to everyone, but we had no idea if it was going to work, right? I mean, we had no clue. And then we also started Cohatch at the same time, and Cohatch has really has allowed me to work on my other businesses and really do it in a place where I've gotten so many resources and so much help and so much mentoring around it. So, 8 years later, I look back and, all three of the businesses are doing relatively well. Two of them were businesses. Cohatch is more of the environment that, has enabled me to be able to work, be close to my family, and do the different things that I need to do to really help drive those businesses.
Let's talk about Fire Rover. And for our listeners and viewers who aren't familiar with Fire Rover, you can find Fire Rover at firerover.com, firerover.com. Explain what Fire Rover is and why it's so important in today's world that's filled with lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and it's funny, when I got in 15, I mean, this as well as anybody. I mean, it was, nobody really understood that lithium ion batteries were becoming a problem or were going to become an issue in our waste and recycling streams. So really, when I got into the industry, I started looking at the publicly reported fires, and I'm like, is there a problem? Because there was no one who was admitting there was a problem. And back then, the reality was, I mean, again, you were different because you're the electronic recycler, but a lot of the waste and recycling guys thought it was an operational issue, right? They're all pointing fingers at their operation, saying, "Why'd you have fires? You must have done something wrong," So, I'm out there saying, "Hey guys, like there's an inherent risk of fire in what we're doing." And like, I think I'm right. And, I mean, as you can imagine, a lot of people were like, this guy's just trying to sell a product and that type of thing. So, fast forward to now, I mean, we have over 500 locations. I mean, we're doing a ton of high hazard materials. I mean, like the technology that we have, I mean, it's patented, and it's, we're in 5 countries now. We have demo units across the world. So, that's been a really, really, really fun kind of, what's the word? Brand building, I guess, as you look at it. And, unfortunately, Brad passed away a few years back. So, we basically, as the company, have, really taken the reins, and, the CEO that we brought in has been amazing, really helping us, drive the business and scale the business. So, it's one of those things that, like, I still go back to that day that I was on the scrap metal facility with Brad, and like, Pete, who's one of our, one of the inventors, and Jeremy Dusting was one of the inventors. And like, literally they were like, Pete was working his job at the scrap metal facility, like as we're in the middle of shoots trying to get this thing moving, you know what I mean? So like, it is a startup from every single, level, but to today where, we're almost FM certified. We're about 8 months away from getting full FM certification for our entire system.
Explain what it actually does, though. Explain to our listeners and viewers who are not familiar or been in the recycling or waste industry why Fire Rover has really revolutionized how lithium-ion batteries are detected before they become absolute crisis or tragedy.
100%. And, it's funny because I always try to tell people, I'm like, we're actually in the fire protection industry, right? We're not in the waste and recycling industry. We've just been so blessed by the waste and recycling industry for the adoption. But really what we do is we use thermal cameras, optical flame detection, and smoke and steam analytics. And really we're looking in, verifying whether there's an issue. And when we verify it, one of our agents will take our unit that's sitting on site and actually shoot and put the fire out. So, I mean, I think last year, the numbers, we reacted or responded to 3,000 events. we had about 350 facilities at that time. A little over 10%, we charged our unit, we're ready to shoot. About 147, 148, we shot and dispatched the fire department, depending if it was a thermal only or a full system. But like, the difference between our system and every system out there is that the fire industry for years has always gone water, water, water. How do we get as much water onto something just to try to stop it from proliferating? But for us, what we're doing is we're literally looking at it. We're focused on those initial 10 minutes between breakdown and fire, or like fire professionals or fire brigade on scene. And if like our level is like, if we see it, we look at it, we verify it, we have to catch it so early. So like, if you think looking at the needles of a haystack, we literally look at every single needle to find, or every single, piece of hay to find the needle. And that's really what we're doing that nobody else can do, right? And that's where having the human being involved makes it, like, FM just classified us as the first smart monitor. But I mean, it really is transformational from water to early detection, putting it out. Because honestly, like, we've less than 30 times we've needed more than 1,000 gallons of our water environmentally friendly wetting agent to deal with the fire. Less than 30 times we've needed the fire department to come and actually do anything else. And I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of events. So it's been, it's definitely transforming the way fires are fought.
And Truth in Advertising, ERI, which is the brand that I'm involved with and co-founder of course, has bought multiple units. I can't even keep up with how many units we bought over the years, but it's worked tremendously in all of our facilities. We're very grateful for your technology and thankful that you guys, you and your partners, invented it and continue to scale it, because it's a game changer in the industry. But the evidence is irrefutable. What is the feedback that you get from firefighters and that very legacy-minded industry to Fire Rover now that you've begun, changing minds and changing hearts?
Well, and I mean, I think the reality is, right, like, you're never selling to the end user, right? Like, so it's really the insurance companies. They're huge from a risk mitigation perspective, right? And then really financial perspective, like, a lot of the owners, when they understand like the risk mitigation, and they understand like how much they put in from an investment perspective. So, like, I give you credit, right? Because the reality is, when we first were selling it, it's like, hey, a safety guy is trying to sell something that costs money, right? Well, nobody wants to spend money on safety. It's not that they don't want to spend money on safety, but there's no ROI that really ties to safety. I think our business is a little different because, I mean, if you look at it, right, last year there were 400 reported fires in the US and Canada, and like there was literally 30 to 40 catastrophic losses, right? And a catastrophic loss is anywhere from 10 million to 100 million, right? I mean, around typically 30 to 40, right? And then, opportunity costs and all the, the other things that are happening that you're not seeing as, the indirect costs. So the reality is that, like, I've only had one time, actually, like last year, of those 400, only one of those was one that we knew of, and it was catastrophic. But we put the fire out. We called the fire department. There was a little fire in the ceiling, which, again, our system doesn't handle roof fires, right? And there was a little fire in the ceiling, and what ended up happening was the fire department didn't arrive for 40 minutes. And then when they went to go to the fire extinguisher, or the fire hydrant, it was completely tap dry, right? So the utility, they don't know if it was the train utility or if it was the water utility that had turned it off, but they literally lost their entire building because of it. And again, if you look at that, of 400 losses, only one of them, had our name on it, or had our name, with it. And again, we did our job. I mean, we're actually putting in a state-of-the-art system for them that's a full continuous flow that, have 104 cameras and 56 nozzles. I mean, this will be a 350,000 square foot. Like, I mean, they will have the top fire protection. So, the reality is that we're dealing with such a hard issue that, from a risk mitigation perspective, it's like almost 95% effective, right? Compared to not having it. So, I mean, it is, I appreciate you saying it's irrefutable. I mean, it's 8 years in, it seems like a slam dunk, but at the same time, I promise you, the first 5 years, like, it was not a slam dunk. So, we have amazing customers now. I mean, back then, I mean, we definitely had some early adapters that, we really appreciate their support.
Let's talk about education, though. Just like in our industry, educating folks to the need for responsible recycling has been so much of what I do. How much of what you do is educating people, the industry, like you said, the legacy fire specialists that were all about water? How much does education play a role in your daily marketing of Fire Rover?
Yeah, and that's the answer, right? I mean, I'm not selling on a daily basis. I'm educating, and I tell this to all my clients. I'm like, I literally, like, I need you to understand our system better than I do,
Right.
Because once I know that, and unfortunately, a lot of times, like, it's hard to get to the executive suite, and the executive suite is who really wants to talk through it, because for them, usually it's a no-brainer, right? Like, they're like, well, why are you even arguing about this? Like, yeah, so I can pay, like, one of our biggest customers. I mean, we're literally protecting $3 billion worth of their assets. And yes, I mean, we are, like, they are paying money every month, right? But the reality is, if you looked at how much an insurance policy would be for $3 billion worth of assets, we are literally a drop in the bucket, right? So again, you really have to be that high, right? Like, to basically look at it and truly understand. And then you also have to understand, like, the public doesn't like fires, right? Even though the public is causing a lot of these fires. So I spent a ton of time trying to educate the public that, like, my biggest thing, and again, like, some people like it, some people don't, but the reality is that I think the manufacturers should be helping pay for the, our systems in these locations, because the reality is that, when you're in waste and recycling, it's a critical infrastructure. We need to have it. Can you imagine if someone didn't pick up our garbage on a Monday, right? I mean, that would be a huge problem.
Right.
And there's so much money right now being spent on educating the public, but unfortunately, like, 70% of the business doesn't even touch the public, right? Like, all of your stuff, all the C&D stuff, all the scrap metal stuff, really, like, you can't educate your way out of it, but someone needs to pay for the fact that, like, that we're all dealing with these hazards. So, again, it's at every level. I'm not a huge fan. Like, I'm a pure capitalist, so, like, I'm a huge fan of market forces basically driving, efficiencies. But the reality is that this is one of those cases where government needs to come in, and again, from a purely supply chain, right, a purely economical, where the manufacturers need to have some sort of payment, or the public, for all the vapes that they're taking that are supposedly disposable, dropping them in. I mean, I did an article in Weight 360 on it, but, like, literally, they're dropping 150 vapes in water and soap, dropping them in your curbside bin, and then all that gets dropped into, one of the large OEMs. I mean, basically, it's being heated up, and then it's being dropped into, basically a loader that's going to crush this thing. So, I mean, like, I don't know if anyone should be surprised, but I'm also, I do believe that, the senators that I've seen out there, and, like, the guys in power, when they talk about recycling, like, literally the only thing they're comprehending is taking a can and putting it in the recycling bin in their house, right? It's really hard for them to understand that, like, true recycling is 1 pound not going into a landfill and being reused. So how do we take that? It's real simple and small. How do we take that and scale that, and really make sure that just everybody's responsible for the costs that they are driving? Which, again, I mean, I know you do this too, but it's, trying to educate the public, on, like, not doing the things that they shouldn't do. But honestly, there's so many freaking fires. Like, there's so many, like, batteries, that I don't know if that ever makes a dent, right? I mean, public education. I'd be curious your thoughts.
Talk about, yeah, I agree with you. It only gets us so far. And just doing more preventative work with systems like yours is really the way we've gone and had a lot of success with it. But you've also created a publication called the Fire Safety Report, which people can find and subscribe to on LinkedIn. What was your vision and mission when you started the Fire Safety Report?
Well, I do, like, the 6th annual waste and recycling. So I've done it for 6 years. And, honestly, this was all, I don't know if Brent Shows. He was with Advanced Disposal, but I was at PPRC, which is like a paper plastic recycling in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it was my first show, and I'm sitting there, and I meet this guy, Brent, and we get along, like, we just, like, kind of hit it off a little bit. We started talking, and, I knew at the time, right? Because, again, Advanced Disposal was a public company. They had 4 major fires, 2 major, 2 minor, that really had affected, I think it was like 3 or 4% of their overall revenue for the year. So, like, they went out on Wall Street and basically, like, they reset their guidance based on losing, 4 facilities to fire. Oh. And so Brent comes in, and I see Advanced Disposal. I'm like, oh yeah. This is going to be great. Like, this guy's he needs our system. Like, duh, right? And I show him the system. I go, what do you think of it? And he goes, I like it. And I'm like, okay, how many do you want? And he goes, why do I need it? And I was like, what do you mean? You have fires? He's like, do I? And I'm like, yeah, it's public knowledge, dude. Like, and he goes, well, he literally said it. And this was the smartest thing that like, and again, I mean, he's one of my best friends. I love the guy, but like, literally, he doesn't realize how, like, he literally said to me, he's like, do my competitors, like, basically what he was asking was, is it me and my operators that are causing these fires, or is it the fact that this is inherent risk of fire in the industry? And honestly, at that point in time, I didn't know. So I went, like, I did Google alerts and I was looking at all these Google alerts. And that's really, I mean, I basically report only fires that were in the media, right? Because to me, if it's reported fire in the media, that means it was a 2 alarm, 3 alarm, usually the larger fires. And I still believe that we're about, there's about 2,400 fires. And I actually think it's extremely conservative. EPA's gone after my data. They came out with the exact same analysis and said that mine were conservative. Eunomia, like, there's been a number of companies that have been, questioning it. But the reality was, I'd done research, I'd done data, I was a lawyer, and I couldn't find, I called every single, like, NWRA and SWANA and ISRI, and I tried to get in touch with everyone. Nobody knew or had any record of, reported fire incidences. So the reality was, the only way for me to understand how to sell this and what the value was to understand what the real issue was. And so, I mean, I would literally say that my report, I'm like, it is what it is, right? Like, I'm not saying it's great, but show me something better and I'll replace it, and again, 7 years later, I mean, what we're seeing now, and I just put an article today out in Waste 360, but I mean, basically, with everything that we're seeing, and even with Fire Rover protecting 500 of the estimated 8 to 10,000, we're still having more fires, right? So it's a question of either too many lithium ion batteries, right? Like, are getting in the waste stream, and it's compounding, right? Which I think that's a big piece of it. And then hot and dry environments are a big thing. And again, it's crazy because we always see a spike during Christmas, right? Like during the holiday season. And then we see a spike during summertime. Right. Well, the summertime spike is not caused by more lithium ion batteries, right? The spike that we see in May, June, July, and August, right, that's from heat and dryness and the batteries, right? So mix it all together, because that's really what MSW is. So, it's been, I mean, the more I do it, I keep learning. So that's why I keep doing it, and I feel like, people like to see it. They like to hear it. I have 8,500 people who are on the LinkedIn newsletter. I have 4,000 or 40,000 people that get my email every month. So, I mean, hopefully, everybody kind of says the same thing. They're like, oh, this is the guy who spams me all the time. And I'm like, you can opt out. And they're like, yeah, I'm just kidding. It's good. You know what I mean? I read it every time. I share it with my team. You know what I mean? Like, so.
What's the matter with people? So it spams me. It's like some of the most important information in the industry to protect you now. Let's switch topics from Fire Rover. And again, Fire Rover, I use it. Our company uses it. We're thrilled with it. And it's such an important preventative measure now. If you're in the waste and recycling industry, if you have anything to do with lithium ion batteries, I highly recommend you looking it up, firerover.com or Fire Safety Report on LinkedIn. Ryan, let's switch topics over to Cohatch. What is Cohatch, and what was your vision behind starting Cohatch?
So Cohatch was, it's funny because my partners, there's 6 partners, and we actually developed the first, we call it Mesh Fitness. It's a 13,000 square foot gym that's in Dublin, Ohio. They basically ripped out like a golf course and the original Wendy's, and they put $1.5 billion and they built like a walking bridge, a $30 million walking bridge. So, I mean, and we were the first business that opened up, right? So my partners brought me in to help, drive awareness for that. And then it was kind of like funny, more opportunistic, the managing partner, his name's Matt Davis. And he worked for like Parker Hannifin and Honda and all these big guys. So, he had been in that corporate world, where he was just like ready to move to do something else. Right. And I had come from literally like, I work from my house. I'm on the road, right? So I have a VW Passat that I have a hotspot in that I can never get good hotspot. This is, 2008 to 2015.
Right.
And I'm working at Barnes & Noble. I'm going to Panera and getting thrown off after 30 minutes. And, you can't get back on. So I had to bring like 2 computers. So I'd have 2 separate computers. Right. And again, like I was living that freaking like, sales guy trying to figure out, try to work. And like, it was funny because Matt and I are, there's a couple things that really have driven like in my life, right? And somebody once told me, they're like, when what you say, people will pay you for what you think is common sense. That's like an amazing day, right? And, usually it hits sometime in your 30s where you're like, oh, like, this is why I'm here. So what was funny, it was that I was helping all these inventors and not get taken advantage of, because a lot of times what would happen is these inventors would go and they would basically take their entire life savings, they would put it into their product, and then that's when they would get taken advantage of, because someone would come in, steal the product from them basically for almost nothing. And, because these guys basically had to pay their house payments and all this other stuff. So as I had continued to work with them, what I really was passionate about doing was working with all these startups. And Matt had the same feeling. And we also, like, one of the things, my dad was, he spent a ton of time. He actually won Man of the Year in Palm Springs for raising like 300 million for AIDS hospice. But he had spent his entire life, like every weekend, it was giving, right? It was like feeding the homeless, feeding shelter, doing all these different things. And I felt completely guilty because, I definitely spent a lot more time with my kids than my dad did with us, right? It was a different world back then. He always had meetings. He always had things. He was giving to the community, but giving to his family. So I wanted to spend time with my kids. So, I spent time with my kids, but I felt like I wasn't giving back the way that, like, I used to say, like, I'm not making sandwiches anymore. So what was interesting was that when we, like, Matt found this space, and our idea was like, this is where we can have nonprofits, for-profits, we all work together. And we were going to basically, all 6 partners, there was Joel and Elizabeth, who are designers. Terry had worked, like he was the one who did the construction. Eric's accounting guy, finance guy. And then, Matt's the managing partner, and then myself. And so what we did was we had this old space in downtown Worthington that the other piece had been made into a gym that Matt owned, but we were like, okay, we're going to take these 8,000, 9,000 square feet and we're going to turn it into a space for ourselves. Well, then we go look at it. And I mean, this was really cool space. It was like, there was a stage that was from, 1820. I mean, it literally, historic space. And it was funny. We sit down and we're like, okay, let's look at it. It was like $1.5 million to make this thing into what we like an office, right? Because again, you have to gut it and then do everything. So then we're like, oh shoot, we probably should turn this into a business. But we did it as a business. So like, Mesh Fitness was, hey, it's a gym. Here's what it's going to look like. Let's work on it. Cohatch was more of a, hey, we have this opportunity, and it was on the back of a napkin. And I mean, a lot of just really interesting PowerPoint, that Matt put together. But basically, long story short, we opened this location and there's 15 offices. Regrip, which is stick grip, actually took one of the offices, wanted to support it. And then, Joel and Elizabeth designed it. They got a free office. And then we created a boost scholarship to try to help the local nonprofit, which was, they had a maker's market. And so basically they do this thing, but like the organization wasn't doing well. So we gave a boost scholarship to them. And then we had a give wall. And like we created all these things that we wanted for ourselves. So, 32 spaces later, it's worked out, right? I mean, but at the same time, like it really was, how do I activate a space in a local neighborhood so that I am close to my family and I'm not commuting to co-work, but, really is an extension of your home. And, again, ton of iterations later, it is now, it is what it is, right? I mean, I'm in a podcast room in Dublin, Ohio. I mean, we have 32 locations. We're in, 5 states now. So, I mean, it really, I've been blessed. It's been fun.
So for our listeners and viewers, if we're going to try to create an analogy here, it's sort of like what Starbucks was always aiming for, the third place, homework. And this is like a safe place where people could really work, but also collaborate with a lot of other community members that are localized in their area. So it's like a WeWork, but a much better version of WeWork.
Well, yeah. And it's funny because, I mean, everyone, like the industry actually has a really bad reputation, because the reality is everyone thinks of WeWork and they think of Adam Newman, who basically and again, I believe in like, and one of the things that I try to do that's different is that like there's VC money, right? And like I'm all about VC money. That makes sense. But like I think all the education really goes to trying to create the next big startup, but not a lot of education goes to, really what I call the seeds, right? It's like it's the guys, like from my perspective, like if you're not making money in 90 days, then it's not a real business, right? I mean, and again, I'm not saying that there aren't bigger bets that need to be made, but of our 200, we actually have 400 nonprofits. So part of our Give Scholarship, we did over $2 million in the last year just with them. And then we have 200 for-profit. And, those are, like there's some amazing, really amazing small businesses. And then we also have deals with like Ohio State, CCAD, like Miami University. So like when you say it's an extension of your home, but it's also, we really do try to tie in all the different levels of the community, right? And again, nonprofit, when you're doing a nonprofit startup, it's just as hard to start up as a for-profit startup, right? It's actually harder because, typically your board doesn't want you to take any risk. So, it's, I definitely, we call it Community Hall 2.0. Memberships are $99, right? I mean, they're really inexpensive. And, we also, at every city, we kind of have like a sports simulators. We have theaters, we have rock climbing walls, we have maker spaces, we have 15 restaurants throughout all the different places. Some we own, some we don't. So, I mean, it's been an amazing experience, but I always tell people I built my share of what I've done for Fire Rover and what we've done for Stick Grip through my relationships in Cohatch. It's funny because we're, on the 21st of September in Cohatch, Springfield, like they gave us this old marketplace and we turned it into like 7 restaurants and it's like a market and it's got like all these different things. And they're doing a wiffle ball tournament that has the 4 guys from the Sandlot that are coming to sign, but they're coming to Cohatch to sign. And then I'll bring my Stick Grips down and we'll do that. And then, you know what I mean? So it is really a lot of community. It's pretty fun.
For our listeners and viewers who want to find it, how can they best find and sign up for Cohatch?
Cohatch. So
.com.
I mean, it's
Cohatch.com.
Cohatch.com or LinkedIn. It's on my LinkedIn as well.
I love it. And then switching topics now, what's Stick Grip? Stick Grip's another one of your startups and businesses. What's Stick Grip right now?
I mean, Stick Grip was, I mean, the original, right? Like John, a guy named Pat Rokoff and John Vernew, I was working with them. They had spent $500,000 building their business and they did everything right? But the problem was that they got into Napa. It was a safety grip at the time. And it's really cool. You basically pull it out and it'll literally suck right on. So it's cold shrink versus hot shrink. And we have the patent on it for applying a grip with this. So these guys had spent a lot of money and they were at their they hit like their limit, right? Like they got in with Napa and Napa's like, hey, where's your EDI? And they're like, oh, EDI, how much is that? 30 grand. How much is it's like, so they spent it. They did everything right. We've had it in ACE for years, the regrip safety grip. And Sammy and I have been working for about 5 years on perfecting the baseball back grip. And so what was interesting, we were working with Dick's. It ended up not working out with Dick's, but so I ended up doing, like during the pandemic, everything obviously got turned upside down. And I did a Kickstarter campaign where we raised $19,000. $9,000 was to give grips to kids, right? Like, so it was, more of hey, help support us. So, one of every dollar went to giveaway. And then the other one was to say, hey, do you want this product in the market? And so we did it. We hit our number. And then a year later, we launched it for baseball. And literally it took off in hockey, right? Like, I mean, you couldn't have imagined. And the funniest thing is if you go on TikTok, right? And again, I'm a digital marketing guy, like I have been forever, but I mean, TikTok was like an accident. We've literally had billions of views on TikTok under Stick Grip. And again, when I say billions, I'm not exaggerating. Like this is true. Like I know what a billion impressions is, and it is literally exploded. So like every 8-year-old to 13-year-old knows about it. And then we do these shows and like they run up and they're like, hey mom, look. And, so it works for lacrosse, cricket, baseball. We've made them for bikes, for pickleball. I mean, it's it's a pretty fun thing that's going on. And again, I mean, is it a huge business? No, but I mean, just like anything else, I'll take a win over a failure because I've had enough failures.
Yeah,
I've always had failures.
Yeah, we all have failures, but serial entrepreneurs live for the wins, whether it's a single, double, triple, or home run. Winning is just fun. Winning is fun. Let's go around the horn here. What's your vision? And for those listeners and viewers who've just joined us, we've got Ryan Fogelman with us. He's a serial entrepreneur. We've been talking about 3 of his brands, not all of them, 3 of them: Fire Rover, Cohatch, and Stick Grip. And we're going to talk about some other things too as well. Ryan, go around the horn here. For Cohatch, Fire Rover, and Stick Grip. I put them all together. 3 of your brands.
I love it.
What's your vision for the next 3? I mean, it's hard to vision out now. There's so many crosswinds politically and other weird things going on, and not only our economy now, but since all the economies are attached, Europe and Asia, and the price of energy. But all things considered, when you go to bed at night, where can you take those 3 brands that we've been talking about today? How do you think about it in terms of scaling, future scaling of Fire Rover, Cohatch, and Stick Grip?
Well, again, I think I look at things different than most people, right? And I mean that in like the nicest way, right? Like
Yeah.
I truly believe in little steps, right? Like every day you get up and you do one thing, right?
Right.
And so, it's hard for me to envision all the brands, right? I mean, I think,
Right.
if you look at Stick Grip, I can envision it being in every retail, shop, and every kid using this, right? I mean,
Right.
especially for hockey and for lacrosse. I mean,
Sure.
now if it takes off for pickleball and others, amazing. Fire Rover, from an FM certification, once that goes through, knock on wood, everything goes well. I truly believe that we are transforming the way that you fight fires. And again, like I want to be very clear that like I've had a lot of failures, right? Like, so I had a product called the iPutter that literally was an optic on a putter, and we put this thing out, and it actually was in SkyMall, and it killed it in SkyMall, and then SkyMall went bankrupt and bankrupted our company. I mean, like I've definitely had a lot of failures, so I don't want to make it seem like but like with Fire Rover, I truly believe that there is a way to transform the way that the world is fighting fires, from water to early detection. So honestly, like anything with any inherent risk, I really truly believe that it's a solution for it. With Cohatch, it's different, right? Because somebody asked me yesterday, they're like, what's your exit strategy, right? And I think that's part of every entrepreneur. What's your exit strategy?
Sure.
Well, like I'm sure at some point there'll be some sort of a exit strategy for Stick Grip or for Fire Rover, right? Because I mean, it's just the way it goes. But with Cohatch, I don't see an exit strategy, because the reality is that we have 32 locations. We have less than 50 investors, right? So what's really nice, we're really like all of our investors, everyone who invests with us, we're all really close. And so the idea is that as we grow this, and again, there's a number of different ways to do it. One of the things we call our gray spaces, right? Which is every city has spent the money to take a building and try to rehab it or reactivate it.
Right.
And they're not able to do it. And there's so many reasons why, right? Like, and we think that we can help them do that. And we think we can help them in a way that doesn't cost them anything, or even if it does, it goes to a nonprofit or to a charity. So like, that's really like the goal is to have 2,000 of these. 1,000 of them will be in all the gray spaces across the country. And again, gray space is simple, right? Like if you look at the United States map and you see like where the population is, it's anywhere there's not population, right? Or a density, So, and I think there, and then again, the goal is to have 10,000 nonprofits that we're helping, and 5,000 for-profit businesses, and like, really trying to give people the culture and the assets to do it without us having to be a part of every single one, which again, getting through from a scaling perspective, that was really the biggest risk to the business, right? Was, oh yeah, this works in Columbus. Does it work in Indy and Pittsburgh and Cincy and, Charlotte and Tampa and Atlanta and, all the locations we're in? And honestly, like knock on wood, it seems to be like the cultures are different everywhere, but most people are good, right? And like, I always feel like, you say all the back and forth. I don't care what side you're on, but like the reality is that there's less murders today than has ever been in the history of the world, right? We are in a safer time today than we've ever been in our entire lives, right? I mean, they're talking about creating like through nuclear fusion that we'll be able to literally get rid of all this power problem, right, over the next 30 years, which hopefully solves everything, right? So like I truly Homer Simpson believe that we are the cause of and solution to all our freaking problems. And the reality is that most people are good, and we just have to give the outlets to allow people to do what they're best at, as opposed to leaving them in their house where nobody gets better just sitting in your home.
True.
I mean,
well, Cohatch can be a national brand, and that's what you're really excited about, rolling it out nationally.
100%. I mean, and I truly believe that there's a lot of zealots out there that like don't know that they need this, but I mean, I've gotten a lot of fulfillment out of it. That's why, from my perspective, like, I want to work with an entrepreneur. The reason I kept Fire Rover and everything else, and the reason I don't work full time for Cohatch, I mean, even though I'm a managing partner, is that, or I'm one of the 6 partners, but like the reality is that like I wanted to basically, I don't want to give advice to someone and then not have done it. So a lot of these guys out there, motivational speakers, that type of stuff, like you have to do it, right? I mean, before you're able to share what you're good at. I mean, there's a lot of like 20-year-old influencers all over the world, and honestly, like I love them, but you know what I mean? I wouldn't have taken my advice at 20.
They haven't left their bedroom yet. They haven't left their bedroom yet. That's for sure.
Well, exactly.
People approach you all the time, Ryan, with ideas and business opportunities and all sorts of things. What's next for Ryan Fogelman? How do you assess what people bring to you, what you read about, what you're thinking about generally in your travels? White space that's out there, voids, the excitement now of AI is upon us, and AI can help us fill a lot of gaps. What are you thinking about now outside of those 3 wonderful brands, Cohatch, Fire Rover, and Stick Grip? What are you thinking about in terms of next investments and next opportunities that really interest you and to make you want to be involved?
Yeah, and honestly, it's a great question. I mean, when I broke up my life, like when I was younger, I always did everything in a 4-year period, right? Because, you go to school for 4 years, you go to law school, business school, like everything kind of broke up in 4-year periods. Yeah. And, since 2015, I'm on basically an 8-year, right? So it's, almost a graduate degree, right? And you're looking, I think about that all the time, but the reality is that I am so blessed to be part of success. I mean, it's funny, like one of my best friends, he started a company, and like his company did amazing. He's literally started 4 other companies and not one of them has done well. And he will always say to me, he's like, lightning strikes once. He's like, it's hard to strike twice, right? So, again, like I'm not necessarily looking for the next thing. I'm always here to help people as much as I can. I mean, I do focus most of my time on Fire Rover. I do focus a good amount of my social time, right? That is the Cohatch side of it. So I've been able to kind of compartmentalize it. And then, and I love like literally working behind a booth, selling stick grip. And like, I mean, it's just fun for me, right? It goes back to the days of like selling shoes, you know what I mean?
Right,
So, that's where like, it just, you're no holds barred, you and the customer call it a day. It's fun. Yeah. So, I think, a lot of people come to me with ideas. I mean, I personally think I'll be in the fire space for a long period of time, right? I mean, I'll keep growing Fire Rover as long as we're blessed to do so. And then after that, I mean, I do have a number of other kind of contacts. And I think that's really where my focus is. Because honest truth is that if you look at innovation in any industry, for some reason in fire, it's actually been the least amount of innovation. And I don't mean that negatively, but right. What ends up happening is that when you have so much regulation and so much worry about safety, you have the NFPAs of the world. And like, it's good that you have the barriers to entry because, you definitely don't want unsafe product put out there that you don't know if is going to cause a bigger issue. But once you have something that is good, like how do you really get it out there and kind of blow it up? So, I really think it's, it's an interesting thing that I think as the public needs more innovation, right? I mean, it's just like anything else. I mean, so whatever way we can do that and bring it to you. And again, you always have the guys who are still reading the newspaper. I mean, God love them. I mean, I have a newspaper right here, like we created a good newspaper, but like, again, the whole thing is like everyone has to be open to change, and we can't stop innovation because people are uncomfortable with change, right? That's one of my biggest pet peeves.
Oh, I'm grateful that you started Fire Rover. I love the Cohatch story and the stick grip story, and the Ryan Fogelman story is going to go on. And Ryan, you're always welcome back on the Impact Podcast to continue to share your fascinating and wonderful and important journey as a serial entrepreneur. For our listeners and viewers who want to find Fire Rover, find the Fire Safety Report on LinkedIn. It's really a great publication. Subscribe to it. Ryan does a great job with that. Also, firerover.com, cohatch.com, and stickgrip.com. Ryan Fogelman, thanks for not only being my friend, but thanks for all the great things you're doing that make an important impact on this world. Thank you for making the world a better place, and thank you for joining us today on the Impact Podcast.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next week.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.